vegetation now. So this study was conducted over 2 years, and it was looking at the effect of different fertiliser rates on swards at different ages. So grass utilisation on beef and sheep farms, as you've probably heard from Cal already, is particularly low at about 4.1 tonnes of dry matter a hectare a year. But yet out there is a potential across all ruminant sectors for about 9.5 tonnes a hectare a year. But from this, I was thinking, what are beef and sheep farms actually growing if they're only utilising 4.1? So I went out and had a wee look, and while I couldn't find a Northern Ireland figure, I did find a UK figure of 94 kilos a hectare of nitrogen a hectare a year. And I thought this was pretty low, especially when you consider that the grass check trial that's been running here for a long number of years is currently using 270. And as Kat was showing there earlier as well, that the average across the farms was about 126, I think, of nitrogen going on a year. So this left me with a number of thoughts, and then this led me to my objective of to assess the effects of nitrogen fertiliser level on sward performance. So as I said, this was carried out across 2 years in 2018 and 2019, and there was 4 fertiliser treatments. So there was our 0, our 90, our 180 and our 270. And our 0 was really there to give us a control. What would the ground grow if we didn't put anything on it and nitrogen was already there? So a bit on my methodology. So in 2018, there were only 2 sites. So we only looked at the effect of nitrogen on grass growth. So there was about 72 2 by 2 metre plots, and they were sort of grouped into groups of 3, as you can probably see there in that wee photograph. That the lighter ones were obviously just recently cut, and these were cut on a 21-day cycle. So the next darker one was obviously 7 days regrowth, and the darkest one was 14 days regrowth. So then in 2019 we adapted this a bit more, and we're like, right, we thought about this. So we had 4 sites in 2019. We had more plots, but we also added in a new factor of looking at new versus old swards. Obviously, a lot of the research out there is showing that a new sward will grow you more grass than an old sward. So we're looking at our nutritional quality, so your dry matters, your sugars, your proteins, your fibre content, and your energy, so your ME. We also looked at the yield that was cut off across the year. We looked at the growth, which was measured both on what was cut and anything that wasn't cut was plate metered weekly as well. We looked at fresh mineral content monthly in the grass. I also did a botanical analysis on the species there to see what percentage of ryegrass versus weeds was there. So going on to the results. So this is the 2018 grass growth curve. So that first line is your NOF. Now the ground grew 6.7 months without any nitrogen at all. So on to the next line, which is your 90. So that grew 8.8 tonnes, and you can definitely see the increase and the added growth just from that 90 kilos of nitrogen that was added. Then on to the 180, you can definitely start to see the dip now over the summer months due to the drought, and this grew 10.8 tonnes. The last one, 270, was quite similar, but you can see the added nitrogen give you a bit of an increase at different times during the year, and that grew about just over 12 tonnes. So from this, you could say increased growth over the 0 was about 31% for your 90. You got an increase of 62% at your 180, and then at your 270 is your 80. Obviously, you would generally want it to be over 100 for 270, but due to the drought, obviously, grass growth yields were restricted. So then on to 2019 grass growth curve. So again, the 0 was slightly lower this year at 4.9 tonne. This is for the old sward. Again, for the 90, you can again see the increase in yield. 180, just over 9 tonnes, just over 9.5 tonnes there, and your 270 was down from the 2018 at 10.76 tonnes. But we did have an increased percentage yield. So at your 90, you were getting nearly 50% more grass. At your 180, you were getting 96. And then for your 270, we went over the 100 mark, so we're getting double the amount of grass growth at 117%. So then on to the new sward. The new sward actually grew more grass at the 0 than the old sward at 5.43 tonnes. The 90 grew 7.38. The blue, the 180, grew 10.15 tonnes. And then finally our 270 grew the most at 12.25, which does definitely increase over the old sward. So there we have, at 90 we got an increase of 36%, at 180 we got an increase of 87%, and at 270 we got an increase of 126% in yield. So it's just another way of looking at it, just basically showing you the improvement relative to the zero in 2018. At 2019 again, this is 2019 yields against the old and the new, so it's all based on the improvement relative to zero on the old sward. So that is why the percentages look higher on the bottom row there. But according from this, you can see that relative to the old sward at 270, grass growth improved by nearly 150%. So a little bit about costings on this. So as you can see, I valued at £180 a tonne, and grass was valued at 13.6p. So from this you can see for every pound you spent on your fertiliser, you got at your 90, £4.90 back worth of growth of grass dry matter, and your 180 give you £5.50, and then it dropped slightly to £3.27 at your 270, probably just because it's coming up to more of its limits of growth potential. At that point it's starting to slow down at the amount it can grow, and that is an average across all 3 years. So on to the quality. So in 2018, N application increased your crude protein, but it decreased your dry matter and your sugars in the grass, which is sort of what you expect to see. So, and then the effect of month on your sward quality in 2018 was, it changes throughout the season, but in the summer months, due to the drought, you can see the increase in dry matter, nearly 30%. So on to 2019, this year's results. So again, we could see that increased N application increased your crude protein and your dry matter and your sugars. So basically the same as 2018. So then looking at the sward results, so your old versus new, there was no difference in grass quality. Again, the months varied as they normally would. Dry matter increased, it didn't increase that much, but your crude protein around that heading phase into its reproductive phase did drop, and it is all sort of normal results that you would see. While there was no effect of sward, when you broke it down into sward, there was an effect in sward versus in month on 2 factors. One of these was crude protein. So in June and August, the crude protein was significantly lower on the new sward. However, biologically, there's probably not that much difference when you're growing your grass, but across the board, when you looked at it through the sward, just looking at sward without the month, there was no difference. And then results for the effective month as well on sward on your sugars, there's only one significant effect, which was in October, where it does look a bit more significant, but it's probably more due to the time of year. Especially this October, it was wet, and the start of October was wet and cold. We're just coming off a cold September, so that's probably more likely the reason why the sugars had dropped so much in the new sward. So then 2018 and 2019, these are I've only got results for 2018 so far. We looked at the mineral content of the plant relative to nitrogen application. So increasing nitrogen application, we've seen that it increased the magnesium and the zinc content, and it had a tendency to increase the copper content in the grass and the plant, and it decreased the molybdenum and the chloride in the plant, and it also had a tendency to decrease selenium. But overall, the mineral content did vary from month to month, depending on the months. Nitrogen application of 180 kilos a hectare a year showed the greatest returns on investment. Increasing the nitrogen application may alter the fresh trace element content of the sward, and the sward had a greater yields at all levels compared to the old sward. But I'd also like to point out that the old swards here are in very good condition. They had a lot of ryegrass in them. When I was doing the botanicals, you were seeing 75% ryegrass in the old swards. So it might not be typical of something that is out there, like reseeding a sward. You're supposed to reseed when it drops below that 40% ryegrass mark. So these swards were in very good condition, and the soil factors were all correct. pH was good, your P's and K's were correct.